Recording in progress.
August 9th, 2024. I'd like to call the meeting of the Public Health and Safety Committee to order. My name is Jean Borak, Chair of Public Health and Safety. We have Vice Chair Cindy Rickards, Member Mike Simonson, and Mayor Andrea Deutsch, Chief John String, Public Works Manager Jeff Eldon, and Borough Manager Matt West, and Assistant Manager Alan Gonzago. So I have a goal to get to the committee reports by around 10:30, so we'll aim for that, and public comments by 10:50. So first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for July 12th, 2024.
Go ahead. So moved. I'll second.
All those in favor? Minutes are approved for July. We have no presentation items. Action items, security camera policy. We're actually going to move this to a discussion item because we don't have the final policy yet. That will be ready for next month's meeting. And should I provide a background, or do you want to?
Sure. So this was something that Council had considered and adopted on July 21st in 2022. Excuse me. This committee has decided to review it to make sure it's updated with our new chief. So new chief has been looking at new chief. That's a new word for you, new chief.
There you go.
Chief String has been looking at it and provided some updates to it. Apologies, we got our wires crossed. We will provide that finalized version and we'll forward it to the solicitor for review prior to next meeting cycle. And since this was a policy that was reviewed by Council and adopted by Council, I would make that recommendation that this committee review it and make a recommendation that Council consider it at the September business meeting. So I don't know if you wanted to, it might make more sense to go into the details of the policy next month with those changes. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about them now.
I think it would be helpful just for you to summarize the policy revisions, just to get a scope of, I think it's very minor, the revisions we're talking about, so.
So I believe these were written, the policy was written before we purchased, or the borough purchased, the camera system that's in place, WiseNet. So some of the things referencing operational, like access logs, stuff like that, isn't in that system. So some of the recommendations are to bring the policy in line with the system that the borough is actually using. And there's a couple mentions of securing videos, and the recommendation was to ensure that we are keeping videos in line with the retentions recommended by the Commonwealth. So just as a matter of retaining period, stuff like that, making sure that we're where we should be.
If I can just underscore that, I think it's really important that we contextualize this for the borough and our neighbors, that this is not us becoming a surveillance state, this is not something that we can do, so we thought we should do, but rather there were several incidents of massive vandalism, both biological hazards, both physical hazards, that had our staff cleaning up something that was things that were absolutely beyond the scope of their job descriptions. Thousands of dollars of damage that has been done and taxpayers continue to pay for. That then we said this has to be surveilled, so when a crime is committed like that, police have a tool to problem solve. And part of that policy, it's very clearly written on who can access, when you will access as the police, that this is not a surveillance tool, but rather is initiated when a crime has been committed. I think that's what the public's going to be interested in, more than kind of the details of the operating system. And as council, we need to continue to reiterate what our motivation for doing that.
And I also, thank you for that. And I also want to remind people that it was also discussed in the Parks and Rec Board when we had those vandalism incidents last year, that was discussed as an idea for implementation to put in urban park, especially around the bathroom areas.
The addition of cameras just to cover the areas where the vandalism occurs.
Which are not in the bathroom,
right?
Or outside of the bathroom. Yeah.
Yep.
Any other questions or discussion? So this will be on next month's agenda for public health and safety, and then it will also be moved to council in the September meeting.
Yes, if this council or if this committee makes that recommendation.
Okay. Moving on to the next item, single-use product ordinance. Matt and Alan, do you have an update?
So this was something that we've been working on. This has been a recurring agenda item just to keep the public aware of what's coming. Thanks to Councilmember Barak for the graphic design assistance and Assistant Manager Alan putting together a great letter that we've been circulating, and it went out to the business owners. This is just an educational piece that we're trying to get ahead of this to promote what we are, what the new ordinance is doing. I just wanted to say thank you to Alan for putting together that letter that really spelled out the details. And just again to reiterate, if any of the businesses downtown need further clarification, please don't hesitate to contact us. We've also got some printouts for you all to put on you know, on your doorways, wherever you would like to put it, that explains what the regulations are.
And I've personally reached out to about 95% of the businesses directly to hand out the flyers and explain and answer any questions that they had.
We actually had a business owner stop in the office to pick up some copies, so
Okay.
we read the letter and
great.
yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I'd also like to thank Ed Ridgway from the Business
That's right.
Association for getting it out. There's also a large sign in our downtown that is very, you can't miss.
I saw those.
Yeah, and they are very helpful. So
Yeah, that's great.
we're pushing out the message as much as possible.
Yeah, thank you to Jeff and Public Works for putting up the sandwich board signs,
Yeah.
the easels, the easel signs, I mean, yeah.
They look great and they're eye noticing and very helpful. And it also helps with the public's understanding of the new
Right.
so that the store owners don't get pushback.
Well, thanks everyone for working together on that. Any other questions or discussion on that? Okay, we'll move on to the next item, the always stop sign at Dudley and Price intersection.
Yep, so that was fully installed a couple of weeks ago, and we continue to monitor it. If you've been by that or through that intersection recently, you'll also see that the two new stop signs have blinking flashing lights on it, just to draw drivers' attention that it has been changed. I have not received any feedback from it, negative, positive, more positive. I think a resident stopped by and said thank you. But defer to Chief if he's received any complaints about the new installation.
Somebody on social media posted a complaint about it.
So you should come to a council meeting or send an email then.
Right. And it wasn't even a direct complaint. It was like, we should be doing X instead of needlessly putting up stop signs where they don't need to be or something like that. It was just...
There's always going to be opinions.
I know.
It's not real life.
And we have
Right,
got to make decisions based on data and.
Well, that I did post and say that this was thoroughly vetted and, you know, explained.
We cannot control the myriad of opinions that are out in the
Yeah,
ether.
just putting it
yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
Do the red lights stay on? But I assume that's just a temporary thing, the flashing.
Yeah.
So how long do we do that for until
What
people
did
get
we do
used
in
to
the
it?
last one? 2 months or so?
They've been on now for about 3.5 weeks,
Yeah.
so we'll probably take them off at the end of August here.
I was just thinking maybe we should leave it on until after school starts, because people may not be going through that intersection now, but if they're going, you know, once school starts again, traffic patterns kind of, I might just think about keeping it at least for the first 2 weeks of the school year. Just,
That makes sense.
I think that's reasonable.
All right, thanks, Mike.
I'm good for something.
If there's no other questions or discussions on that, we'll move on to the next item, the traffic calming and stormwater bump outs on Iona Avenue. So, go ahead.
All right, so our traffic engineer, who is also joining us via Zoom, Ben, hi Ben, forwarded us a proposal for the traffic calming stormwater bump outs and hump on Iona Avenue. If you'll also recall, it came in at a time where I added it to the capital improvement plan. So it is on the master inventory list. It did not make the 5-year capital improvement plan, meaning it's not proposed to be funded over the next 5 years. But that doesn't mean that it couldn't change in priority from when we start the next capital improvement plan review starting January 1. The idea is that we reevaluate all of those criteria on the master inventory list, which then bumps things up, bumps things down, which defines that next 5-year capital improvement plan. I think it's important to note that we've taken that proposal, and it's not cheap. It's $185,000 to do all of those things. We've recognized it. We've put it on the master inventory list for that capital improvement plan. That's something that I would encourage council and all of us to consider moving forward when we generate these plans, to start realizing the reality of the recommendations and start putting in a plan in place to act on it. That's something we haven't been good at doing, and something I would like to get better at doing, hence putting it on the master inventory list. While it's coming in at $180,000, $85,000, it also doesn't mean that we can't explore other low-cost solutions to get this similar result. I don't know what they are right yet, but it doesn't necessarily lock us in to do these things, thou shalt do these things. We have this plan. What can we do, and I like to use the term more like guerrilla type applications of traffic calming. What can we do that's still legal, that's still safe, that can get us a similar result to kind of do a test case whether or not those bump outs work, whether or not the traffic hump works. We've got a temporary traffic bump, a speed hump there now. What would a permanent speed hump do? So these are all good things that I would encourage us to continue to build upon. And then through the next capital improvement plan review process, maybe through continue to interact with the prioritization. It's a one-block area. While originally concepted to be a stormwater management to help our PRP, if you know the geography and topography of the borough, that's at a relatively high point of the borough. And so it's not going to get us a lot of credit for the PRP to have stormwater management related to the PRP at those locations. We're just not going to get the volume of water at those locations. Somewhere down here, this is the low point of the borough, installing something down here would be a much better investment in PRP funds than something that's upstream. Not saying that we can't do it, I'm just saying related to and compared to other locations where bump outs could be installed, they might not rank the highest. Yeah.
Thank you for that great summary. And I think there's lots of lessons in this procedure that, again, you inherited. So you're coming in midstream. But I do think, when we hired John String and expanded the role of Chief of Police and Director of Public Health and Safety, and we formed the PAC, that folks were certified in the crime prevention through environmental design tool, we had this kind of idea that our #1 complaint is traffic. I mean, what a privileged community we live in, right? That this is the biggest problem, is parking and traffic. And that collectively, police should be working with the experts on the street, right? The police who are boots on the ground, and the public works who know every nook and cranny to address this issue. And Iona became, okay, this could be a test case. This could be a pilot. How do we use the built environment to calm traffic? It seemed like, oh, these bump outs might be a good idea because we have to do it anyway. I hear you saying that's not going to get us the credit we need. I would almost suggest that we kind of pitch it then to those two offices, police and public works, and say, can you work with the engineer to come up with those low model alternatives and truly see it as what it was intended, is to be a pilot on traffic calming for the borough, not at a tune of $180,000. Why would we explore that? We're clearly not going to have 200 grand to do block by block of Narberth. Right. So that's not what I would suggest moving forward.
I have a question in terms of, you're saying that it's not an ideal location for stormwater. I mean, that's not conclusive, right? We haven't.
That's a great segue. So I was going to introduce the idea that came to light through this conversation about the Iona Avenue. How this is the analyst in me. I would like a menu list of where are the good locations for a stormwater bump out? Instead of saying, yeah, let's put them here, let's do a more comprehensive look of, hey, give me a list of 30, 40 locations and then rank them. Where do they rank? That gives us that list of saying, okay, look, if we have an option to install bump outs here for traffic calming, does it make sense for us to also install them from stormwater management standpoint? Where does it rank on this list? If yes, okay, great. If no, we might reevaluate that and only do traffic calming instead of stormwater management. So we've asked our borough traffic engineer to come up with a proposal to help us do that, which is not just strictly the borough engineer doing it, but in concert with our public works department to identify these potential locations for stormwater bump outs. The idea that we have, we're going to say, you know, we're looking at 30 locations. Give us 30 locations. Those 30 locations will then be quantified based upon criteria. At the end of it, which ones are ranked the highest? Where should we put the next investment in stormwater management? The proposal that they have forwarded to us is $2,500. And my recommendation to this committee is to make that recommendation, that we move forward with that. We do have funds available in our traffic engineering line item that would certainly pay for that. I think it's a minimal investment for a maximum reward. Therefore, it's not aspirational. The goal, you know, the end product is usable, it's functional, it's not pie in the sky, you know, with a recommendation of $200,000 for a block. It's where should we be putting. It gives us the opportunity to make better decisions about where we should invest public taxpayer dollars.
With the caveat that there is a parallel plan to use other tools to calm traffic.
Yes.
And I do appreciate, again, Jeff, not to put you on the spot, but I'm sure Jeff could rank these 30 spots, but we need the engineer to certify it. So we don't need to pay Pannoni to rank this if Jeff and Public Works can do it and then just have Pannoni, you know, confirm and sign off.
So,
to keep costs
working
down.
in collaboration,
Yeah.
identify the locations, and the engineer's specialty is doing estimated calculations of sediment reduction. That's what we don't have the ability to do in-house, right? And so it's going to be a shared project. So I don't know, Ben, if you have anything else that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, so we actually already got an email from Public Works with some identified locations, but agreed. So we would theoretically look at those locations sent to us by Public Works, and then we would be able to determine how much credit we would be getting based off of the contours and the impervious area and the amount of sediment that each bump out would, the pollution would be reduced based off of those areas. So we would be able to get some sort of credit and then rank them based off of that list of which ones would be a better location compared to others. And when talking about traffic calming on Iona, the bump outs do provide traffic calming, but theoretically they wouldn't provide as much as, say, the speed hump has already given us, which has reduced it. Since there's already parking on either side of the road, people are kind of inclined to not speed, if that makes any sense. And that's kind of what the bump outs provide when they do that, when it comes to traffic calming, is narrow the road so that drivers are reduced width so that they have to slow down. So yeah, the bump outs would provide some, but not as much as, say, the speed hump does.
As a follow-up to that point, is that something that we can explore? I know in the previous traffic study they mentioned a speed hump on Meeting House Lane, and if we do, and to Matt's point about exploring temporary traffic calming, we could do a painted bump out there to test the traffic, what the impact is on calming the traffic. Do you think that might be a better solution at this stage?
I think it would provide, it would give you an idea of what it would do, but if I'm being honest, I don't know a bump out would really reduce it all that much. Again, with the cars being parked on either side, that kind of gives you the sense of a bump out already, you know, because it already narrows the road to begin with. So, and like Matt said, that Iona Ave is at a high point, so it isn't the most ideal location for stormwater reduction if we're looking towards that.
So Benjamin, I have a question. One of the tools that we've used and has not been successful in the past is using the pedestrian crossing signs to narrow the stop sign. They're constantly moved. Is that an example of where the cement planters could be used to narrow that road and serve as kind of a semi bump out?
Well, so the pedestrian sign, are you talking about pedestrian signs at Iona?
Yeah, Iona and Windsor, and then again at Meeting House in Iona.
Yeah, so you could add some sort of, that would pedestrian width for traveling across the roadway if you included the bump outs. So it makes it shorter distance for pedestrians to cross the road, but it doesn't really add anything for traffic calming. It's more just to alert drivers.
So I'd be interested in what are some, as requested, what are some low-level things that we could do in-house to calm traffic and make the pedestrian experience. I know the chief has done a lot with the bus stop there because it's a very crowded bus stop and it gets very congested. So, you know, perhaps you can think about what is the scaled versions of things we could do in-house to enhance that pedestrian safety experience as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of a tough thing. There isn't too much that could really be done traffic calming wise besides what we kind of proposed. Especially with the no left turn. I know that we had already discussed that, but that was another option, which would obviously reduce traffic by not allowing people to turn.
Theoretically, I'm going to interrupt. I would wave to people making the left turn once they stopped it. That is, you know,
we have gone over that too. That people just don't even obey it.
Chief wants to sit an officer there 24/7. I think you may not like that.
That may not be the best use of our resources.
But yeah, so there again, you're kind of limited on what you really can do to reduce limit traffic. There isn't an awful lot you can do. Kind of what we propose is most of what you can.
What about
speed hump being probably the most effective.
What about some non-traditional methods? I know sometimes, like in Media, Pennsylvania, they have the painted intersection on the street, just to visually slow down drivers, to create also more of a pedestrian-looking kind of space instead of just a vehicular throughway.
Like a don't block the box type thing?
No, more like a painted mural on it.
Oh, okay.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Public art.
Yeah, and we do have 2 former traffic studies that had lots of tools that would calm traffic. So I want to push back against there's not much more we can do. You know, again, if we can't do stormwater bump outs, what can we do in-house?
Okay.
Are there non-traditional ways, like Jean's saying? We've had former traffic engineers come and give us non-bump out options that could be used across the borough. I have to believe there's some stuff out there.
Okay, I'll look into it further.
I mean, we did talk about the potential speed bump on Meeting House, which especially with the new development opening soon, I mean, at least if we can do that on a temporary basis, in conjunction with if we're going to allow left turns out of the parking lot now, which we had talked about as well, if we're going to have left turns out of that parking lot, I'd be strongly in favor of at least putting up a temporary speed bump along Meeting House, because that's more so, I think, than Iona. I think you said this last time, you know, that's really where the problem is. People come, you know, off of Montgomery at a fairly high rate of speed, and they're kind of used to being, it's like getting off the highway, you know, when you're kind of used to going that fast, and they kind of haven't adapted to now coming into the borough and slowing down to 25. I kind of feel pretty strongly that should be at least a start for us, a low-cost start.
So, in terms of next steps, could we have Pannoni kind of look into some possible alternatives for traffic calming especially if those bump outs are not ideal there.
Yes, I'll coordinate directly with Ben to come up with some more low-cost solutions.
And then,
And Meeting House.
and
I would add
And you want to
that as a-
expand it to Meeting House?
I would add
Yeah.
a priority for
Yeah.
all the reasons Mike said.
We get confirmation from Chief of Police about that. Think that's appropriate?
I think we need to look at the numbers, yeah.
Okay. All right.
And then in terms of the $2,500, since it wasn't on the agenda for today, I guess we'll do it at
Well, so
infrastructure.
That was my thought, because at the infrastructure meeting, we're gonna be discussing the MS4 and PRP. So I feel like this is relating to that, so, and it is infrastructure, so I thought it might be good to have that committee recommended for council.
That makes sense to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. If there's no other comments on that, can we move on to the next agenda item, which is additional parking on Haverford Avenue.
So, thank you. I wanted to start this conversation at this committee. This is something that I was working on when I was here previously, working with our traffic engineer to identify additional parking opportunities along, I'm going to just point, this stretch of Haverford Avenue from Conway all the way up to downtown, to reevaluate that space for a couple of different reasons. First of all, to alleviate some congestion, to provide some more parking opportunities, and also working here every day. This is a raceway. When you talk about speed, there is speed here. it's significant speed right through here. So, as a way to traffic calm this as well. So I wanted to start this conversation at this committee to see if you would be in favor of exploring a more formalized plan that we could develop and then institute. It would mostly be in coordination with Public Works in striping, painting, certainly coordinating with our friends at the fire department to make sure that the proposed plan meets their turning radii and so forth.
I would be in support of that. I just want to also point out there's multiple planning efforts going on at the same time with the master park planning, and I know there's been preliminary concepts and discussions about traffic flow on Haverford Avenue and Windsor Avenue, and possibly reversing the directions on those streets to improve the traffic flow. So that would impact that, and also reconfiguring the parking lot at the municipal lot to improve the traffic flow there, and reducing some of those parking spaces, and possibly adding some reverse angle in parking on Haverford Avenue. So I think as long as we're continuously talking, making sure that we're on the same page with the master park planning process, I think the Haverford Avenue, Windsor Avenue, the one-way pair of streets, that's something that's going to need a traffic study to figure out the details of that.
That's aspirational.
That is so far in the future. I would hate to have us miss an opportunity to provide more parking and slow traffic in something that maybe would happen probably long after we're on council. But particularly given that we are going to have construction downtown, which will be disruptive, to add additional parking. And again, slow traffic. You did this years ago, Matt. I mean, we've already been here, done that. I think now is the time to do that. It's not a permanent investment. We're talking about painting some lines and doing a traffic study.
Pretty low cost.
If we ever change directions or do these big plans, we haven't invested and wasted borough money.
If I may, I think it's a great opportunity if we expand some parking on Haverford Avenue. Since it's slightly a little further directly from the stores, it's a great area for employee parking. To get the employees who park at the stores out of the stores and out of the direct area where the customers park, and pull them down half a block, and gives them an opportunity and opens up our parking for customers in the center area. So I love that as a possibility, maybe longer term parking or
or those first two spots maybe are the 15-minute so businesses can pop out, get something, and then, you know, maybe there's some combinations that make
Absolutely,
sense.
but I love the idea of providing a place for the employees of our downtown, because it's always a fight or a problem. And if we can get them to stop feeding the meters in the downtown, that opens up spaces for our customers. And just because it's like, 10 steps more to the downtown. So I think it's a golden opportunity to do something like that.
And to add to that, the Station Square plans potentially could remove parking spaces in that spot. So to kind of plan ahead and see where we can provide more parking on Haverford Avenue.
Okay.
I think that would be a good idea.
So the committee be okay with me coming up with more formalized plans, working with the traffic engineer to present at the next meeting?
Please.
That then have a recommendation, hopefully a recommendation to council?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please.
Great.
And I like the mayor's point about the employee parking. I mean, I would even consider
Maybe
reserving some of,
special permit parking
special
for-
permit parking for the employees.
Yeah,
We
because-
had this complaint about
It-
somebody on
Yeah.
Windsor having their spaces taken that they were assuming was a commuter
Yeah,
issue, and my guess is actually, because the commuter lot is still empty,
yeah.
that it's actually employee parking.
And it's been a recurring problem for all the years, over the
Yeah.
two, decades I've had a business in the borough, about where do employees park. And that would be like an ideal person, thought.
Are you envisioning these as metered spaces or non-metered spaces?
At the time, no, let's just get them
Yeah.
painted.
Functional.
And start
We'll figure
small.
out the use later.
Let's start small. Let's
Yeah.
not try wading too far into the weeds about
Yeah.
uses. Let's get them up and see how they're used. And then if they're underused or overused, that'll tell us,
Yeah.
okay, this was a good idea, or we need to remarket them somehow.
And do you think it's at all feasible that this could happen before the spring sports? Because that's what, we get such traffic at the park, and it is such a scary speedway here. What's a timeline on something like this?
Well, I think that we've already got a draft plan that we had messed around with a couple of years ago. If we just formalize that, we need to get fire department feedback, public works, police feedback. I'm really thinking that we could probably have a draft plan for this committee to review at the next meeting cycle.
Oh, great.
And then have council consider it in September. And then it's predominantly, my guess is it's going to be predominantly painting.
Okay. And you're not even suggesting going as far as angled spots, just
Not at this
the
time.
traditional? Okay,
Not at this
Keep
time.
it simple.
Keep it simple.
great.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
I love it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Very good.
If there's no other comments on that, we can move on to the next item. Pedestrian bike accessibility, Mainline Greenway. No official updates on that, but I do want to alert people that there's a night ride this Saturday occurring on the Mainline Greenway and on the Ardmore Rock and Ride course. This is a repeat from last year, and I think it will be an annual event. It's dubbed the Night Before Ride because it occurs the night before the Ardmore Rock and Ride event. And there were about 150 attendees last year, so it's a big ride. Chris Leswing from Lower Merion Township is collaborating with several cycling groups, including some from Philadelphia. It's occurring Saturday, August 10th, 7 to 10 p.m. It meets and starts at Manayunk Bridge and goes along the Mainline Greenway route and has a midpoint in Ardmore, but it crosses through Narberth on the way to Ardmore and on the way back to the bridge.
Last year, if you recall, it was about 45 minutes later than they anticipated.
There's a lot of delays that happen.
The Narberth crew had left, and then about 20 minutes later, they all came through.
So I think moving forward, we should also think about how we might be able to collaborate on something like this, because the Ardmore break will basically allow the cyclists to stop, grab an ice cream, grab a drink from the McShay's there, and the surrounding businesses. So it's good for businesses. They're going to do 1 to 2 loops around the race course too, which is super fun to do it at night. And invite the community to attend if they can. And no updates on the active transportation plan. Although I know that Montgomery County Planning Commission has met with Simone Collins on the master park planning process just to make sure they're coordinated on that. And then we'll move on to committee reports. With the Shade Tree Commission, I can hand it over to you, Rick.
Thanks. Hi everyone, I'm Rick Trailes. I'm the current chair of the Shade Tree Commission. This is Carson Clark, the vice chair of the commission. Thanks for having us in. We have a number of things to update you on, talk about, discuss. First, our tree, as you guys know, we do tree planting with our community volunteers every spring and fall. We get usually about half of the trees through Pennsylvania Horticultural Society. They just sent out their order form this past weekend or maybe Friday. That order is due September 10th. Tree planting day will most likely be November 16th. In addition to the trees we order through PHS, the last few years, due to demand on PHS and demand from our public for specific species, we've also done another order from a local nursery called Tree Authority. So Alan and Matt and Jeff have handled all of our checks in the past. I don't think this is a surprise to any of them that this is coming up, but we do always ask that Public Works help us with the pickup. I don't know where the pickup is this year. In the past, it's been at the Navy Yard, it's been other locations, but we've always had Public Works help us with the pickup and delivery of the trees. One item in relation to the tree order that I would like to talk about a little bit, and I don't know what the borough's capabilities are, but when we publicize the opportunity to buy trees, and when I'm doing all of the coordination with the public, it's generally emails from me or Carson from one of our Gmail accounts, and it's emailing with individuals. So from being on this commission now 8 years or so and doing tree plantings twice a year, I have a collection of many, many, many Google spreadsheets and a very long list of emails, which I don't mind doing, but when somebody moves and they say, hey, can you take me off this list, I have to figure out across those 16 spreadsheets where they are. I'm not a database manager. I'm not good at that part of it. So I know the borough does the Borough Blast, and you have a curated list of email addresses. Going forward, if there's any opportunity for us to use any of the tools that the borough has for those sorts of things, we'd love to talk about it. I'm not asking Matt and Alan to do all of that work, but like if there's an extra login to, I don't know whatever service you might use for the Borough Blast, but that's something I'd love to talk about sometime.
And what we've been thinking about is, and I think I may have talked to you about this, Alan, but the idea of having a email come from the borough that's actually just about ordering trees, right. Not just another item in the Borough Blast. It's twice a year, always the same time or ish.
Yeah, it's no problem. We can do a special post. We use MailChimp, that's the service we use. And for like big items or items we want to highlight, we'll do like just a separate post just for that. So we can do that for the plantings.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
It's mostly the ordering, but I guess we might do something on the planting too. But we have a loyal and wonderful crew of volunteers. But it is hard for us sometimes to get people, again, so like the April planning, we have to get the order in, like it's sometimes February, usually January, and now it's August, so people are like, what, November, So
it doesn't give you a whole lot of time there.
It doesn't, yeah. Anyway, thank you.
So you'll all be hearing more from us with requests for help soon. But also, I encourage you all to consider planting trees on your own properties. I know borough properties are kind of frozen at the moment as we wait for the Park and Rec plan. But the PHS trees have different costs depending on whether they're going to be planted in a private yard. They cost less if they're going to be planted in a public space or as a street tree within 15 feet of a curb or sidewalk. So it's always a good cost, it's a good program. Of course, whatever we order from a different nursery can be planted wherever, no restrictions on those at all. I wanted to talk about pruning our trees as well. We've been made aware of some issues with some of the trees on private properties and street trees, that our ordinance says the trees need to be pruned to a height of 8 feet above sidewalks, and I believe the ordinance says 14 feet above streets. I know this has not been something specifically on the borough's radar, but I also know that some of our residents have received violation notices about pruning over the sidewalk over the last month or so. So I have no problem pruning up my trees and managing vegetation. I want our sidewalks to be clear. I want, walkability is one of the important parts about an arborist. But I am concerned that when residents get a yellow violation notice, it would make them hesitate to plant more trees. Some of them, I could see some people saying, we should stop planting trees if no one maintains them. And I don't want us to get to that point. I do want residents to prune their trees properly and at the right time of the year. Right now is not the right time of year to prune your trees. You should do it when the trees are dormant, when the leaves are off. So really the dead of winter is the best time to prune trees. So what I would like to propose is that the Shade Tree Commission and the Code Enforcement Office do some sort of joint communication in combination with holding a winter pruning event. I would, again, want to lean on our volunteer base to do much of the pruning. I'm not talking about the entire borough, but I would need some help again. We would need to purchase more tools to have people have pruners, loppers, small saws, things like that. I don't want people 14 feet up in the air. I'm not talking about the streets, just over the sidewalks. I would probably need some help from Jeff coordinating pickup of pruned limbs, whether it's Public Works or whether it's working with our brush hauler to figure out a way that we can just leave the limbs somewhere for them to pick it up. And I would also love if we could ask the Code Enforcement Officer possibly to change the approach right now if she does see an issue with someone with trees, with limbs over a sidewalk. So again, somebody doesn't just go out and start hacking at their trees that they don't know what they're doing, because it's important to prune them properly as well.
Rick, with the caveat that there are, especially when the leaves really grow, at times they're blocking street signs and traffic control system. And I think we don't want to wait, until another few months when it could be a public safety hazard.
Sure.
So if a tree is blocking a traffic control device, I think that's an immediate concern.
Sure. Yeah, I can agree with that.
And this wouldn't apply to like shrubbery, right? So I think the large part of like what's hanging over the sidewalk is mainly like bushes or shrubbery, not so much. I know there are some trees that are hanging, but like in those cases, I don't know if we want to, how we want to approach that.
I'll speak from personal experience. I received a notice, ironically enough, saying that there was vegetation overgrowing the sidewalk, and the front of my house has a little retaining wall right against the sidewalk, and so my vegetation on the edges there is already up higher, so when it droops, it does block the sidewalk. I took care of that, and Aisha, the Code Enforcement Officer, was texting with my wife and said, oh, while you're at it, make sure your trees are limbed up 8 feet over the sidewalk. Okay. So in my case, it was actually both. But I think my trees were pretty close. I don't think she was out there with an 8-foot stick measuring every branch.
Yeah, okay.
So if other people get that same message with an and 8 feet above the sidewalk, that's where my concern is. And again, I want to keep everything, I want to keep the sidewalks clear. I just want to make sure we roll this out in a way that nobody gets discouraged from continuing to plant trees or removing their trees or pruning them badly.
Is this pruning event just focused on the planted trees from Shade Tree Commission?
Yes.
Okay.
We're not proposing that our volunteers be out there
Right.
on ladders with chainsaws. I mean, we're talking about anything that you could handle with a lopper or a small handsaw, so a couple-inch branches at the most. And we've been doing these plantings for 7 or 8 years, so even the trees that we planted at the very start, their branches within 8 feet of the sidewalk, for the most part, should still be manageable with hand tools.
So, I mean, Matt and Ellen and Jeff, do you think this is within your capabilities?
Yes, and Rick, you had sent me an email a couple weeks ago raising these same concerns and responded, of course, we would love to coordinate with you. Just to be clear, our code enforcement officers do not go out and prowl. They are not actively enforcing. We are complaint-based, and so when the office receives a complaint about an obstructed sidewalk or roadway, that's when they go out and pay the visit.
Yeah.
I really do think it's a good idea to have that coordination, and I can't wait to work with you and your team and talk with Kevin and Aisha to say, how can we do this better?
Yeah.
They oftentimes, code enforcement is public health and safety, here's the requirements, this is what I need. They're just not tuned into the health of the trees.
Yeah.
Right? So I think this is a really good opportunity for them to learn, for us to learn, to you to learn what code enforcement is doing, what the lens through which they look. It's a really good opportunity for collaboration. I like this idea of a pruning also. I'm going to speak for Jeff, and he'll chastise me later, but he is a tree guy. And his extensive experience in trees, he is always tree first. Speaking for Jeff, and he is always looking for opportunities to help our tree canopy, and I know he's got that in his heart, and I know certainly anything that we can do to support the Shade Tree Commission, we'll do it. Within reason.
Yes, well, along the same lines, maybe within reason, maybe not within reason. I think I've mentioned this to Jeff before too, perhaps the borough should start considering when we contract with the tree care company that takes care of the downtown trees, starting to hit some of the right-of-way trees in the neighborhoods as well, like maybe 1 or 2 streets per year, not the whole borough every year, but we see, I walk past a tree every day walking my daughter to school that clearly was not pruned when it was young, and now it's grown in a way that there's a probably 24-inch trunk that you can see just gets hit by trucks constantly. And that tree is going to get knocked down, that trunk is going to die. Some pruning now can save us a lot, I think, over time.
And we can identify the blocks that would be probably highest priorities. That doesn't have to be left to the borough to police it, because we're always looking at the trees.
Great.
And we know where we've planted everything.
Yeah.
And I know, my intention is to have borough administration be better about including Shade Tree Commission in the land development review process as well. Something that we've been working on internally, making sure our land development process, everybody who needs to be involved in that process is included early on. So we're making that change also. Unfortunately, we don't typically have a lot of land development in Narberth, but the past couple of years we have, and it's just so many different moving parts, not to make excuses as to, why some processes have been fumbled, but the intention is to make sure that moving forward, any land development, anything, Shade Tree Commission is in our code that you are to be reviewing our land development plans, so.
Great. I have a couple more things. It's been a long time since we've been here, so it's kind of a big update, but the next few are a little more brief. Staff and council have asked the Shade Tree Commission to work on a tree replacement plan to start planning for as the honey locusts throughout downtown start to pass their reasonable lifespan. How do we replace them? I was here speaking to this committee a few months ago about modernizing our streetscapes and making sure that what's under the sidewalk works with the trees. So we've been tasked with that. And we have our standard meeting coming up this Tuesday night. We're going to use part of that time to basically scope the project, talk about what needs to be in it. But I do want to let everyone know that we will need some time from Anoni on this at some point. if you want this to really be a plan that you can use for grant funding if necessary, we're gonna need either an RLA or an engineer's seal on it. And I don't think the borough's insurance covers my seal, so the consultant should do it.
Just works for me.
Sounds good. All right.
And just to be, full info on this, a lot of municipalities about the size of Narberth have tree plans and standards, so we're not reinventing the wheel. We plan to draw upon places that have done a good job. So just so you know, we're not like sitting around coming up with, what we're going to do. It's going to be like based on best practices that are already in the field.
I'm a fan of a good plan. So.
Yeah.
I do want to ask one question. You don't have to name names. We have currently the vacancy. We're aware of one applicant. Does anyone know if there was only one applicant?
Just the one.
Okay, that's fine. I believe she's going to be appointed officially this
Next Thursday night.
Okay.
Yep.
I
don't want to say that she's going to be appointed. It's on the agenda.
It's up for consideration.
Yeah.
Thank you.
She does have a problem.
Okay. I don't think it should matter, but with that vacancy, we lost our Park and Rec Master Plan representative. I sat in on a key person interview last week with Simone Collins, and just would say to report out to all of you, the group key person interview they did with all of us, I think went pretty well. I didn't see anything in the concepts that would be alarming to us as a commission. I thought they looked pretty good in general.
From a tree standpoint?
From a tree standpoint, a landscape architect standpoint, a resident standpoint, I was generally pleased with them.
And I forgot that they were the representative for Master Park Plan.
Sally was, yeah.
If there's an individual in the commission you think might be a good replacement for Sally, they could take Sally's place and probably be a part of the Master Park Plan, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll figure that out maybe
Okay.
Tuesday night.
Okay.
Okay, I don't think I have anything else, except, I would just add, as you're doing all this traffic calming stuff, remember trees can be part of that. If you're talking about paint, maybe we can do some big pots and trees or, low cost tree stuff too. I'm sure PHS would love to provide trees for traffic calming.
Okay.
Did I miss anything?
Yeah. Thank you all very much for having us.
Thank you to the Shade Tree Commission. I mean, we're very fortunate to have you guys and appreciate all your work and working with the borough, and your volunteers are great too. So,
Yeah.
And I know, Rick, you've been on since 2016, so many years of service, and we appreciate your expertise.
Thank you.
Bye, Andrew.
Bye-bye. Sorry, I have to go.
Okay, any other comments?
Carson, can I just ask, is your last name C-L-A-R-K or K-E?
It's C-L-A-R-K, no E.
Okay.
And only Philadelphians ask me that because there was a famous hockey player.
Oh, yeah.
Like Clark is
Bobby
basically
Clark.
never
Bobby
spelled
Clark.
with an E, ever.
Mm.
So anyway, it's just an interesting little fact of trivia.
Okay.
I
I'm
live
a
on
native New
Woodside.
Yorker, and I asked, so
There you go,
must be some
exactly, yeah. No,
fancy
Rick and I
Clark.
both live on the 100 block of Woodside, just by coincidence.
I just need to put it for the minutes.
Great, thank
I
you.
get in trouble. I
Yes,
spelled
thanks.
his name, so.
Environmental Advisory Council, I think we will have an update next month, but I just wanted to put out that the petition was officially filed to the PUC for the community choice aggregation, and I believe the public comment period has closed. We did get some initial feedback, so they should have an update next month. Police Advisory Committee, I did neglect last month just to thank John Gonzalez for his service to the Police Advisory Committee, and he submitted his resignation last month. And council is also working on developing a charge for Police Advisory Committee, so that is in progress. And we'll move move on to departmental reports. The fire company report yet to be received, but will be in the packet.
Yep, once received.
Okay. And then police report, anything else to report, John?
Just there was a note in there, we started enforcement on the meter zones, or the permit zones, excuse me, based on the new system. And as we had hoped, I guess is the best way to phrase it, we were seeing a similar number of violations as before. So the assumption is that everyone that had an old permit that was in compliance before July 1 has switched over to the new system. Obviously, if issues arise, we're addressing them, some concerns with location, stuff like that. So we're working through those, but it seems like the information campaign was effective and most everyone's aware.
Thank you. No other questions or comments? Then we'll move on to public comment. Please state your name, address, and then we ask you to keep your comments to about 3 minutes. We'll start in the back.
I'm Greg Harper. We live in the 200 block. Deborah Winfield is my neighbor. We live in the 200 block at Price. I think I've emailed with some of you, maybe Matt, Cindy, and Gina, to get that right. So thank you for inviting us today. The main concern, I'm listening to your comments, and obviously traffic isn't a common presentation here at this committee, but I've been trying to drill down what the main issue is. The main issue is that residents on 200 block trying to exit their driveways are blinded to oncoming traffic. That's the issue. Why? It's for two or three reasons. Narrow street, that's okay. Parking on both sides, that's okay. We get that. That's not going to change. What's interesting though is Price Avenue, if you've seen it, crests in the middle, so that cars entering from either the west or the east side are not seen as we try to get out. So we are here asking for advice, help, ideas. One of the concerns we have is that Price Avenue, I can't prove it, but I bet it's true, is used as a Montgomery Avenue bypass, people coming down Essex and going out Price to hit Montgomery again. The non-Narberth residents tend to drive a little faster and really aren't accommodating to opposing traffic and being courteous to try and help people get through. Very rare can we get two cars through that lane at the same time, so somebody has to give way. The concern is that sometimes that combination of blinded exit, speed, and narrowness leads to close calls. So we're really not quite sure how to address that. We thought maybe a speed hump coming on the entrance sides, but we really need to defer to your expertise. You have been dealing with these issues throughout the borough for a long time and looking for advice, whether there's low-hanging fruit, in-house solutions, don't know, but that's why we're here.
I know, so you had also filed a report, I believe, or through the MyGov portal? Or
I don't know, we have not something.
We do, yeah, I believe we've had some submissions to the portal. You had asked us to do that just to make that official.
Right.
And then we were invited to just present the problem here. So, whatever next steps, what you need from us, find what we should expect from you, that would be nice too. So.
Okay, all right, well,
Thank
thank you.
If I could just add a little color commentary. I'm Deborah Winfield. I'm Greg's neighbor and 210 Price Avenue. At least 2 or 3 times a week, I have a heart-stopping experience coming out of our driveway. And there's also concern because there are a lot of little kids on that street. And people really sometimes drive very recklessly down Price. The parking, as Greg said, we understand, but the parking gets very close to our driveway. So especially if there's an SUV parked, it is virtually impossible to see what's coming without getting really into the path of whatever is oncoming. So a few years ago, we tried to get a triangle painted on the pavement that would preclude someone from parking really close to the driveway. But we were advised that that is only permissible where there's a stop sign, and so we're not in that category. I don't know what the solution is. We've talked about the speed bumps, and we've also talked, and I don't know if this has ever been considered, about making Price Avenue one way. That would not completely alleviate the problem, but it would help and would alleviate some other problems. So
Thank you for having us and thank you for your time.
Yep.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, thank you.
Any other public comments in the room? Any online? Okay. Then I will take a motion to adjourn.
I will move to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor? And we are adjourned at 11 o'clock sharp.
Nice.